Malika had been looking forward to this day for weeks. It was their third wedding anniversary, a milestone she thought they could celebrate, just like they had dreamed when they first got married. In the city of Tumbeka, she had prepared everything with care: candles, a delicious meal, and the dress Jafari had once told her looked perfect on her. Her heart fluttered with excitement, thinking this might finally be the night they reconnect. But as the evening unfolded, everything fell apart. Jafari stumbled in, smelling of alcohol, his eyes bloodshot and vacant. He barely looked at her as he criticized the dress she wore, calling it cheap and out of place. Malika, taken aback, tried to smile through the discomfort, hoping he would snap out of it. But instead of calming down, he grew angrier. Without warning, Jafari pushed her. Malika fell to the floor, the gasps of their guests echoing in the background. The room went silent, but the sting of the slap he delivered echoed in her ears. Her guests stood frozen, unsure of what to do, as she lay there, humiliated and in shock. Jafari, drunk and enraged, shouted at her, not caring that their closest friends were witnessing his cruelty. Tears welled up in Malika's eyes, but she held them back. This wasn't the man she had once fallen in love with. This wasn't the anniversary she had imagined. The sting of that moment was deeper than any physical pain. This wasn't the first time Jafari had hurt her. Behind the closed doors of their home, Malika had learned how to stay quiet, how to avoid eye contact when he was angry, and how to hide the bruises with makeup and long sleeves. From the outside, they looked like the perfect couple, but inside, she felt like a prisoner. Jafari never saw her as a partner. He treated her like a thing he owned. If she spoke too loudly, if she disagreed with him, or even if dinner wasn't warm enough, he would snap. And every time, she told herself it was the last. But it never was. Until that night. The night of their anniversary, when he hit her in front of everyone, something changed. One of the guests, a distant cousin, who had always admired Malika's gentle nature, had secretly recorded the scene on his phone. No one spoke in the moment. Everyone had been too shocked. But the next day, the video started spreading, first to a few family members, then to neighbors, then to social media. Malika sat on the edge of her bed, watching it, watching herself get slapped, watching herself fall to the floor like she was nothing. She couldn't even hear the noise anymore, just the silence that followed, the look on her own face as she tried to hide her pain. Her eyes were swollen, her lip bleeding, but what hurt more was the way no one helped her. No one stopped him. For hours, she didn't move. She didn't speak. She just stared at the wall. The shame, the betrayal, the fear, it all mixed into one dark cloud. She had been holding in this pain for 3 years. She had begged for change, prayed for peace. But Jafari only grew colder, meaner, more dangerous. And now the whole world knew. At first she was terrified. What would people say? Would they blame her? Would they call her weak? But slowly, as the messages started coming in, women she didn't even know sending her words of support, something inside her stirred. A small voice, a quiet fire. She had been broken so many times, but this time something snapped. Not in a bad way. Not in a way that made her want to scream or cry, but in a way that made her sit up straight. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Tired, hurt, lost, but still standing. That was the moment she knew. She couldn't go back. Not to him. Not to that life. Not to silence. He had beaten her for the last time. And this time, he had done it in front of the world. The bruises on Malika's face were still dark. Her lips still sore. But her heart had already begun to change. For the first time in years, she didn't cry herself to sleep. Instead, she lay in silence, staring at the ceiling, planning. The pain was still there, but now it had turned into something else. Not anger, not revenge in the usual way, but strength, cold, calm, steady strength. She didn't tell anyone what she was thinking. Not her friends, not her neighbors, not even her mother. She knew the world loved to silence women like her, women who stayed too long, who should have left earlier. So she said nothing. She just waited, let them talk, let Jafari think she was still scared. But inside, she was building a plan. One morning, with her scarf hiding her bruises, she went to the small legal office on the edge of Tumbeka. A friend had once whispered the name of a kind female lawyer who helped women in abusive marriages. Malika found her, waited in silence until her name was called, and then, with shaking hands, pushed the door open. The lawyer, Miss Temi, didn't ask too many questions. She had seen that look in other women's eyes. Quiet, but burning. Malika told her everything, the hitting, the insults, the threats, and finally, the slap heard around the world. "I want a divorce," Malika said softly, "but I don't want to run. I want him to feel what I felt." Miss Temi nodded slowly. "Then we'll do it right. Legal, powerful, public." That same day, Malika signed the papers. It felt unreal, like signing her own freedom. But she didn't stop there. She wanted more than just escape. She wanted to rise, to make sure no woman ever had to feel as powerless as she once did. In the weeks that followed, she lived like everything was normal. She still made breakfast, still wore her wedding ring, still smiled when Jafari passed by. He didn't suspect a thing. He was too busy defending himself online, trying to stop the viral video from spreading. But it was already everywhere. Blogs, news channels, even radio shows had started talking about it. And though Malaika hadn't spoken a word publicly, her silence had already made noise. And in that silence, she was preparing. She started journaling her story, writing down every detail she remembered. Dates, wounds, threats, everything. She met with women's groups in secret, listened to their stories, and began to find her voice through theirs. She practiced speeches in front of her mirror at night, not because she had to, but because she was preparing for the day she'd tell her story to the world. This wasn't just about leaving a bad man. It was about showing him, and everyone watching, that she was not a victim. She was a warrior in disguise. Her revenge wouldn't come in screams or violence. It would come in silence, in grace, in the moment when he least expected it. And when that moment came, it would shake his world the way he had shaken hers. Except this time, she wouldn't be the one on the floor. She would be standing. Malaika had always been the quiet one, the kind of woman who spoke gently, kept her eyes low, and apologized even when she had done nothing wrong. For years she had lived in Jafari's shadow, serving tea with a smile while hiding bruises under her sleeves. But after filing for divorce in secret, something inside her began to change. She didn't just want to walk away, she wanted to walk tall. She heard about a women's support group in Noloma, a nearby town known for helping survivors like her. At first she hesitated. What if they judged her? What if they thought she was weak? But deep inside, she knew she had to go. She packed a small bag and took a dusty bus to the community center. Her heart beat fast the entire ride. When she arrived, she was surprised. The room wasn't full of sad faces. It was full of powerful ones. Women laughed, hugged, shared stories, and held each other like sisters. They weren't victims, they were fighters. And for the first time in a long time, Malaika didn't feel alone. One woman stood out. Her name was Achieng, a tall, confident woman with a deep voice and eyes that had clearly seen pain but refused to drown in it. She had been through her own storm and come out stronger. She took Malaika under her wing and said, "You don't need to roar to be a lion. You just need to stop running." Achieng taught her everything. She helped Malaika find her voice again, literally. Every day they would practice public speaking. At first, Malaika could barely say her name without trembling, but slowly, her voice grew steadier. She learned how to tell her story without breaking. She learned how to speak, not with fear, but with fire. She also took self-defense classes. At first, Malaika laughed at the idea. "Me? Fight," she said. But Achieng insisted, and soon Malaika was throwing punches, blocking strikes, and feeling muscles she never knew she had. It wasn't just about protecting her body. It was about reminding her soul that she was strong. In the evenings, the women would sit in a circle and share their journeys. Some had lost everything. Some were still healing, but each one believed in Malaika's dream, to expose Jafari publicly and take back her dignity in a way the whole world would remember. One night, as the fire crackled outside the center, Malaika stood before the group and said, "I want to tell my story, not for pity, but for power. I want to show every girl watching that silence doesn't protect us, but courage does." The women clapped, some even cried. And Achieng walked up to her, placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "Then we'll help you make sure the whole world hears it." That night, Malaika didn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of excitement. Her plan was coming together. She wasn't just a housewife anymore. She was becoming something more, a heroine, not in books, not in movies, but in real life. One quiet morning, as the sun rose over Ngoloma, Malaika received a letter that would change everything. It was from the National Women's Rights Association, inviting her to speak at the annual gala in the capital city of Nandola. She read the letter twice, her hands trembling. Out of hundreds of women, they had chosen her, the same woman who once couldn't even look at herself in the mirror. The invitation felt like a dream. Just months ago, she was hiding bruises and holding back tears. Now, the whole country wanted to hear her voice. She sat on her bed for a long time, holding the letter against her chest. A small smile appeared on her face, not out of pride, but out of peace. This was her moment. She knew one thing for sure: Jafari would be watching. He always watched the gala. He used to mock it, calling it a bunch of angry women shouting. But this time, he'd see her standing there, not as his wife, but as a woman he could no longer silence. Malaika called Achieng that same evening. "I've been invited to speak," she said, her voice shaking. Achieng let out a loud cheer over the phone. "Malaika, this is your stage. You were born for this." But Malaika didn't just want to speak. She wanted to make a statement, one that would be remembered forever. She contacted the event organizers and shared a special request, a twist at the end of her speech, something powerful, something unforgettable. At first, they hesitated, but once she explained, they were stunned into silence. Then they agreed. Some even moved to tears. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Malaika worked on her speech every night. She stood in front of mirrors, in front of Achieng, in front of the other women at the center, practicing until every word felt like her own heartbeat. She didn't want to sound like a victim. She wanted to sound like a survivor who chose strength over silence. She also carefully prepared the envelope, the one that would hold the divorce papers. She sealed it with calm hands and wrote Jafari's name on it, not with anger, but with finality. The day of the gala finally arrived. Malaika wore a bold red dress that flowed like fire. Her hair was styled in soft waves, and her eyes, though gentle, held a storm behind them. When she stepped into the grand hall filled with powerful women, journalists, cameras, and flashing lights, she didn't shrink. She stood taller than she ever had. Back in Tembeka, Jafari sat in his office, the TV on. He had no idea what was coming. He leaned back in his chair, smirking when he saw the gala begin. But that smirk slowly faded when he saw her name announced. Malaika Achieng, survivor, speaker, warrior. He froze. She walked on the stage, applause rising around her. And with each step, she carried not just her story, but the pain of every woman who had ever been silenced. She looked into the crowd and smiled, not out of happiness, but from knowing that the time had come. Her voice echoed through the room as she began to speak, calm, clear, strong. And in her heart, she whispered, "You're watching me now, Jafar, but this time I hold the mic, and you've already lost." The lights in the gala hall dimmed slightly as Malaika stepped onto the grand stage. Her bold red dress shimmered under the soft lights, making her look like a flame, calm on the outside, but ready to burn everything that once tried to break her. She took a deep breath, steadying herself as the eyes of hundreds settled on her. Cameras were rolling. The moment had arrived. She stood behind the podium, her hands gently holding the microphone. For a second, she looked around, at the rows of women, the journalists, the guests, the organizers. Some smiled warmly, others waited silently, but all were eager to hear her speak. The hall was still. Not a single whisper floated in the air. Malaika began softly. "My name is Malaika. I come from Tembeka, and I have a story that began with love, but was buried in silence." Her voice was calm, steady, yet it carried years of pain. She spoke of how she met Jafari, how the charm faded into control, how her voice was stolen behind the walls of their home. She described the bruises, the fear, the night she cried into her pillow without a sound. She talked about the anniversary, the moment everything changed in front of their guests. Gasps filled the room. Many covered their mouths. A few women wiped away silent tears. She paused. The silence in the hall was heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. Then she said, "But that night didn't break me. It woke me up." Her eyes scanned the crowd. "That was the night I decided I would no longer be a victim." People nodded slowly, moved by her words. Some clapped softly. She let the silence sit again, letting the weight of her story sink in. Then, she reached slowly under the podium. There was a slight rustle as she pulled out a white envelope. The crowd leaned forward, curious. Some sat up straighter, sensing something was about to happen. She held up the envelope and said, in a voice louder and clearer than before, "This is for the man who beat me on our anniversary." The audience froze. "This," she continued, "is your freedom, Jafari, and mine too." She opened the envelope, revealing the divorce paper. The screens behind her lit up, displaying the documents in full view for everyone to see. There, in bold black ink, was Jafari's name and her signature right under it. The crowd erupted. Cheers, claps, gasps. Some women stood up, applauding. A few shouted her name. The sound was deafening. Reporters rushed to capture the moment. Camera flashes blinked like stars. The host of the gala wiped tears from her eyes. Even some security guards looked stunned. Malika didn't flinch. She stood there, holding the papers high, not just for herself, but for every woman watching from their homes, for every girl told to stay quiet, for every soul taught to endure pain in the name of love. Back in Tumbeka, Jafari's glass fell from his hand as he watched the live broadcast. His face turned pale. His phone began to buzz with messages. His world started to crack, but Malika's had just begun to shine. She ended her speech not with anger, but with power. "I am not just his ex-wife. I am my own woman now." And as she walked off the stage, the applause followed her like a storm. She didn't look back, not once, because this was not the end. It was her beginning. The moment Malika held up that white envelope, the whole room went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. The lights above the stage focused on her like a spotlight from the heavens. She looked straight into the camera, calm and unshaken, and said, "To the man who beat me on our anniversary, this is for you." The words hit like thunder. She didn't shout, she didn't cry, but her voice carried the weight of every tear she had ever shed. Slowly, she opened the envelope with steady hands. And then, with the grace of a queen, she held up the papers for everyone to see. Behind her, the giant screen lit up. The divorce papers were shown in full view, her signature bold and strong under the final line, "Irreconcilable cruelty." There was a pause, just for a second, before the room exploded. Cheers, screams, clapping, people standing up, crying, shouting her name. The audience lost control. Some hugged each other. Some filmed on their phones, tears running down their cheeks. One old woman in the front row kept repeating, "This is history. This is history." Even the event organizer, standing on the side of the stage, had their hands over their mouths in shock and pride. That moment was no longer just a speech. It was a revolution. The video of Malika's speech hit social media within minutes. By the time she stepped off the stage, it had already crossed 100,000 views. By midnight, it had reached every corner of the country, and even beyond. The hashtags began trending. #, Malika speaks, #, divorce, drop #, say her name #, silent no more. Women from all walks of life reposted the video. Survivors shared their own stories. Activists praised her courage. News channels played the clip on repeat, analyzing every word she said, calling it a landmark moment for women's rights in Africa. Back in Tumbeka, Jafari was still in his office when he saw the clip. He had been drinking, as usual. The moment he heard his name on the screen, he froze. When he saw the divorce papers on the giant screen, he dropped his glass. It shattered on the floor. His phone began buzzing non-stop. Texts from clients, family, and friends flooded in, but none of them were asking how he was. They all asked the same thing. Did you really do that to her? Some messages were even worse. "You're done. Don't come near our business again. We can't be associated with a man like you." He panicked, tried to call Malika. She didn't answer, tried to go online to defend himself, but everywhere he looked, people had already picked a side, and it wasn't his. Even young girls were quoting Malika's words on TikTok and Instagram. "I am not just his ex-wife. I am my own woman now." It was being printed on t-shirts, posted on school walls, shared in group chats. Malika had become more than a woman. She was a symbol, but while the world clapped for her, she sat quietly in her hotel room that night, watching the video on her phone. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just nodded to herself and whispered, "That was for me." And somewhere deep inside her heart, a door opened. Not the door to revenge, but the door to peace. She had done what many feared. She had ended a chapter with courage, not hatred. And in doing so, she had inspired thousands to pick up the pen and start writing their own. That night, she slept not as a victim, not as a survivor. but as a woman finally free. Jafari sat frozen in his office chair, the video still playing on a loop on his laptop. Malika's calm, powerful voice echoed through the room. To the man who beat me on our anniversary, this is for you. His face turned pale. His mouth went dry. He tried to close the tab, but his hands were shaking. The phone on his desk buzzed non-stop. At first, he thought it might be friends checking in, but one by one, the messages hit harder than any slap he had ever given. We're ending our partnership immediately. Our company does not support abuse. Don't contact us again. His phone rang. It was his biggest client. Jafari answered, trying to sound normal, but the voice on the other end was cold. We saw the video. We want nothing to do with you. And just like that, the call ended. Panic started to crawl up his throat. He jumped on social media, trying to write something, anything, to defend himself. He posted, "This is a personal matter. People shouldn't judge without knowing the full story." But it was too late. The comments poured in like a storm. "You're a coward. You hit your wife on your anniversary. How dare you now play the victim? Malika is our queen, not you." He deleted the post. But screenshots had already spread everywhere. Memes popped up mocking his face. News reporters waited outside his office building. Protesters stood on the street holding signs. "Justice for Malika. Arrest Jafari now." Even his family was ashamed. His sister called him crying. "Why didn't you tell us what you were doing to her? We believed you when you said everything was fine." His mother refused to speak to him. His father sent him one message. "You've ruined our name." The walls were closing in. His secretary quit. His staff stopped showing up. The office that once buzzed with power now felt like a haunted cage. He tried to meet with some investors, but none of them wanted to be seen with him. Even those who didn't care about the truth cared about their image. And being linked to a man the entire nation now hated, that was bad business. He tried to call Malika just once. Her number had been changed. He emailed her, a long letter full of excuses, half apologies, and a desperate plea for a second chance. No reply. He sent another message. "Please talk to me." Just once. She never did. Meanwhile, Malika was everywhere. Her face on TV, her words in newspapers, her story being told to millions. People cried when they heard what she had been through. Young girls looked up to her. Women in villages and cities repeated her speech line by line. She was being called the voice of the voiceless. Celebrities praised her courage. The government announced they were reviewing domestic abuse laws because of her case. And Jafari, he became a cautionary tale, a symbol of everything wrong with toxic masculinity, a man who thought he could control a woman forever until she chose to take the stage instead of staying silent. He couldn't walk outside without hearing whispers, couldn't go online without seeing his name dragged through the dirt, couldn't sleep without hearing Malika's voice in his nightmares. The empire he had built on fear and control had crumbled in a single moment of truth. And the saddest part? He still didn't understand how badly he had broken her, until the world broke him in return. After the night of the gala, Malika's life changed in ways she never imagined. The video of her speech, her calm voice, her powerful words, the moment she held up those divorce papers, had gone viral, not just in Tumbeka, not just in Africa, but across the world. She had been invisible for so long, a quiet housewife who everyone ignored. But now, her name was on everyone's lips. People started calling her Queen Malika. Little girls told their mothers, "I want to be like her." Women who had stayed silent for years suddenly found the courage to speak up. She had become more than just a survivor. She had become a symbol of strength. Within days, media channels started reaching out to her. Reporters wanted interviews. Talk shows offered her guest spots. People wanted to know how she had survived, how she had stayed so strong, and most importantly, how she had turned her pain into power. A popular fashion brand invited her to be the face of their new women's empowerment campaign. At first, Malika hesitated. She wasn't a model or a celebrity, but her mentor from the support group told her, "You don't need to be famous. You already are." The photo shoot showed her in beautiful traditional dresses, standing tall, her scars visible but her smile stronger. The campaign went viral, not because of makeup or clothes, but because the world saw her soul shining through. Malika didn't stop there. She wanted to give back. She remembered how lost and broken she once felt, how she had no voice, no one to guide her. So she started a podcast called The Final Word. It was a safe space where women could call in, share their stories, ask for advice, or just feel heard. The first episode was just her, talking into a microphone saying, "You are not alone, you are not weak, you are not worthless, you are powerful, and your story matters." That episode reached thousands, then millions. Soon, women from every corner of the continent wrote to her, some from cities, some from small villages where internet was rare, but her name still echoed through radios and word of mouth. Mothers told their daughters, "Listen to Malaika, she speaks truth." Even men started listening, many of them learning, changing, apologizing. Charities reached out to her. She was asked to speak at schools, universities, women's conferences, and every time she took the mic, she reminded the world that no one deserves to live in fear and that healing is possible. The government of her country invited her to speak at Parliament during a debate about domestic violence laws. Standing in front of lawmakers, Malaika didn't speak like a politician. She spoke like a woman who had been through hell and returned with fire in her soul. Her words moved even the coldest faces in the room. New laws were passed, new shelters were funded, more women were protected because of her voice. But Malaika stayed humble. She still lived in the same neighborhood, still cooked her own food, still sat with other survivors every week at her support group, because she knew that her power came from staying connected to the pain that once broke her. She was no longer the quiet woman who flinched at loud voices. She was a queen, not by crown or throne, but by heart and courage, and the world finally saw it. From the dust of her darkest days, Malaika had risen, not just to heal herself, but to light the path for millions of others. Her rebirth wasn't just about freedom, it was a revolution. Years had passed. Malaika had become a powerful name across the country. She was known as the woman who stood up, the one who changed the story for thousands of women. Her podcast was a success. Her voice had reached even the quietest corners. She was happy, peaceful, and free. She never looked back. But one day, the past came knocking. Jafari, he sent her a message first, then another. Then finally, he came to one of her public events and stood quietly at the back of the room. His once proud face now looked tired and empty. His eyes searched for the woman he once hit, as if hoping to find even a little bit of kindness left in her. After the event, he waited near her car. As she walked towards it, surrounded by her team, their eyes met. He stepped forward and said in a low, shaky voice, "Malaika, please, just 1 minute. Please, talk to me." The people around her went quiet. Everyone waited to see what she would do. Malaika looked at him, not with hate, not even with anger, but with complete calm. She stepped closer and said in a soft but steady voice, "You gave me pain on stage. I gave you freedom in return." She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She didn't give him any more of her energy. She simply turned, walked to her car, and drove away, head high, heart strong. The people who witnessed it clapped softly, some with tears in their eyes, because in that moment, everyone knew the girl who was once slapped had returned that slap, not with hands, but with silence, dignity, and unstoppable success. And that was her final word.